Tampa has a new mayor this morning. The former police chief, Jane Castor, is making history, becoming the first openly gay mayor to lead a major Florida city. Castor crushed her Republican opponent in a landslide victory last night, and she did it with less money. That makes Castor the third openly gay mayor elected this year, after Chicago and Madison, Wisconsin. Now, we're going to speak to Mayor Castor momentarily, but let's first look at how critical the job of a mayor is. We love talking about this on the show because for all our criticism of the inaction at the federal level, there are lots of interesting things going on in the cities of this country.
Cities and states are getting done.
Things are really getting done. A mayor is elected, generally speaking, or sometimes appointed to be the chief executive, the nominal head of a city, town, or a borough. Their responsibilities can include everything from serving on the city council to preparing the annual budget and appointing citizens to serve on advisory boards or commissions. Mayors are in charge of maintaining a level of peace in the city by appointing and supervising the city's top safety officials and overseeing the police and fire departments. And they even have some of the biggest, they've been some of the biggest champions on climate change. This is where Stephanie and I were going with this. There's much more going on in climate change in states and cities across the country in the absence of policy and action on the federal level, most notably having to do with the Paris Climate Agreement. Mayors are also the ones on the front lines responding to national disasters and are in charge of declaring citywide emergencies and regulating certain actions during and after the event. Stephanie, you know, you and I, when there's a natural disaster or a hurricane, it's mayors and police chiefs and fire chiefs that we're talking to. And another issue that mayors deal with is a growing, diverse, and integrated community, right? That's why a number of mayors have said to the federal government, we're not in the business of immigration policy. It's no problem with the federal government having a role in that, but we as mayors need to keep our cities safe and our people prosperous.
Which is often why they want to preserve sanctuary cities, not because they're necessarily taking a position on immigrants. They don't have the resources
to be immigration enforcers.
To be immigration enforcers. Joining us now from Florida, we've been talking about our Tampa's newly elected mayor, Jane Castor. Congratulations on your win, Mayor-elect. Let's talk about how you got it done. Your opponent, David Straz, he ran. I just spoke to Congressman David Jolly, who sends his regards, and he said it was a nasty, nasty, dirty race. Your opponent spent nearly $5 million of his own money. You spent a small fraction of that. I mean, you had a bigger profile because you were the police chief. What do you think made a difference to Tampa voters?
Well, first, it was only negative on one side. I ran a very, very positive campaign, no negativity whatsoever. I focused on the issues that were important to our community, and I had a vision, and that was the difference. That's what our citizens want from a leader. And they saw that in me, and I'm very excited to have been elected as the mayor of my hometown.
We don't necessarily think of that part of the country and that part of Florida as being uniquely liberal. Did being gay play a big part in this discussion, or did the fact that you were the police chief sort of just people knew you and knew how you work?
Right. People knew me, and the issue of my being gay never arose during the campaign. People want somebody that has the skill, knowledge, and ability to get things done, and that's what that was my message. That's what I focused on, and apparently the voters heard that.
Let's switch gears and talk immigration. The Florida House is on the verge of passing a ban on sanctuary cities. We were just discussing that in the state. What do you make of that effort and the president's tactics right now on illegal immigration?
Well, I think it is a solution looking for a problem, because in the cities in Florida, the counties actually handle all of the jail systems, and the state handles the prison system. And so really there is no such thing as a sanctuary city in the community. But here in Tampa, we are a very, very diverse city, and we are welcoming of everyone in our community, and we're not going to be in the business of immigration enforcement.
You know, it is important for us to have this conversation. We have it with mayors, but you're a police chief who's going to be a mayor.
Right.
Just articulate for us, because there are some people who portray mayors and cities or sanctuary cities as being lawless and embracing of illegal immigration. But as a police chief, there are very practical reasons for not wanting to be involved in the business of immigration enforcement.
There are. First and foremost, the idea of this lawlessness does not bear out with the facts. You know, immigrants commit very, very few crimes in any city nationwide. But it's also important because there are certain communities that are distrustful of law enforcement. And so you have to build those bridges with those communities so that they are trustful and can come forward when they are victimized, and so that we can make their neighborhoods as safe as every other neighborhood in the city. So it's significant that law enforcement serves every single citizen, regardless of their immigration status.
Let's talk about what your priorities are with the federal government. Next week, President Trump and Democrats are meeting to discuss infrastructure. In your campaign, you cited public transportation as an area you want to improve. Is that your number one concern with regard to Tampa and federal dollars?
That's the number one concern here. As I have said all along, we never lacked for good ideas in transportation. What we lacked for was the funding to implement those. And we actually, here in Hillsborough County, voted in a penny tax for transportation called All for Transportation. So I want to combine that with state and federal dollars to get some transportation solutions here in Tampa.
Let me ask you about climate change, because, again, that's one of those areas where we just have much more success in having conversations at the state and municipal level. Florida is ground zero for the effects of climate change. Your citizens are people who really sort of appreciate the connection between water and their land and their cities. Yes. What do you do about this?
Well, I'm going to address that from both ends. First and foremost, I'll have a resiliency and sustainability officer in my administration, and we're going to look at what we can do to mitigate the effects of sea level rise, which clearly we're on the water here. What we can do as far as city codes are concerned, building codes, lifting roads, whatever we can do, making our city greener through the fleet, through solar energy, through green buildings. And then on the other end, what we can do to reduce our carbon footprint. And that's everybody's responsibility, not just city government, but every single citizen. What we can do to reduce our carbon footprint here in the city of Tampa.
It's not a political issue. Important. It's a livelihood issue.
Right.
It is.
You've said you want to create a better relationship between Tampa's police department and its residents. Why couldn't you do that as the police chief?
We have a great relationship with our community, and it's something that we worked on every single day. Tampa is one of the safest cities for our size nationwide, and the reason for that is because the police officers and the citizens work hand in hand to keep crime out of their neighborhoods. And I am incredibly proud of our police department and our community and the relationship that they have working together to keep crime out of Tampa.
Well, Mayor-elect, a historic win. Congratulations.
Hey, MSNBC fans, thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on that button down there and click on any of the videos here to watch the latest interviews and highlights. You can get more MSNBC for free every day with our newsletters. Just visit msnbc.com/newsletters to sign up now.